What if everything we thought we knew about Hollywood's most picture-perfect marriage was nothing more than a carefully staged illusion? What if the smiles, the jokes, the public displays were all a script hiding a crumbling foundation tonight? We peel back the curtain on the unraveling story of Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, a tale of silent staged moments and shocking clues that suggest something much darker is happening behind the cameras. Stay tuned, because what I am about to reveal will change the way you see them forever. From the very beginning, the image of Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds has been painted as Hollywood perfection. The couple that laughed at themselves, the witty Instagram captions, the constant posts about birthdays and anniversaries, the staged photographs of them walking hand in hand through the streets of New York, as though love itself had spilled onto the sidewalks for the world to admire. But those who look deeper, those who study the patterns, begin to notice the cracks forming long before the headlines ever dared to whisper a single doubt. And now, as each detail emerges, as each silence becomes deafening, the question can no longer be ignored. Is this the end of a marriage once sold to us as unbreakable? The signs are everywhere, subtle but undeniable. The absence of Blake on Ryan's feed, once a place overflowing with jokes and declarations of devotion, now eerily quiet. Her birthday came and went without the familiar, playful tribute from him. Something so small, yet so telling. Because this is a man who built his brand around his public devotion to her. And suddenly, that performance has stopped. Fans began to speculate, watching closely as the couple retreated from their own narrative. The last, carefully staged photo ops fading into memory, with Strollergate still echoing in the background. Those strange outings where they seemed desperate to prove something, desperate to remind the world of their unity. Yet now, not even that effort remains. They walk separate paths, not just in their careers but in their silence. Ryan stepping onto red carpets alone, Blake absent from his side, not even acknowledged in interviews, not even mentioned, as though the distance between them is not an accident, but a decision. And still the public wonders, how did we get here? What happened behind those closed doors? What shifted in the story that was so carefully crafted for us to consume? Some believe it began with the whispers about Justin Baldoni, the legal battle that drew Blake into the harshest spotlight of her career. Accusations of manipulation, of betrayal, of trying to seize what was not hers. And in the background, the shadow of Taylor Swift, once her closest ally, the godmother to her children. A friendship so deep that its absence speaks louder than words. Because when Taylor Swift, a woman known for loyalty, even through storms of controversy, decides to walk away from you, the world takes notice. People asked, how could a godmother simply vanish from the lives of her godchildren? The answer, whispered in hushed tones, was betrayal. Blackmail. A rift so profound that reconciliation was no longer possible, and Ryan had to know, he had to see it all unraveling. The man who once stood proudly at her side, now faced with the realization that the foundation beneath him was built on secrets and half-truths. So he did what he always does. He smiled, he joked, he deflected on camera, but away from the flashbulbs, the tension grew, and those who know the signs began to recognize the performance, fading for every silence, for every missing post. There was a story untold, and then came the red carpet moment. A child standing before Ryan Reynolds asking him a question, a simple interaction, but one that set the internet ablaze. His awkward smile, his rushed reply, his insistence to skip the pleasantries, all captured and dissected by those who understood the stakes. He is a man under scrutiny. Every gesture, every word weighed against the narrative that surrounds him, and still he faltered, appearing insincere, forced, rehearsed, and fans wondered, is this how he treats those closest to him? Is this the same language that runs through his marriage? Sarcasm masked as intimacy, jokes delivered. In place of vulnerability, a performance that now feels more like defense than charm. The comparison to Anne Hathaway arose, once ridiculed for being overly polished, overly theatrical, yet redeemed by authenticity in the end. And the difference is stark, because Anne was never cruel. She was never sinister. She was simply too much. But Blake and Ryan, the whispers insist, are something else. Something calculated, something darker. And when you look closely at the silence, the missing posts, the absence of support. Even for Blake's ventures, the picture becomes haunting. The Variety article only fueled the flames whispers of smear campaigns of coordinated efforts to shape public opinion, as though every headline, every Instagram account, every comment section was part of a larger chess game. And yet the simplest truth may be the most devastating. Perhaps there is no grand conspiracy. Perhaps there is only resentment, fatigue, and the quiet crumbling of a marriage too carefully curated for too long. Because audiences are not blind, they see the missing pieces, they notice the absence of joy, and when Blake appears without Ryan or Ryan appears without Blake, the silence between them is louder than any staged photo could ever be. This is why people are invested, not because they want to see a marriage fall apart, but because they sense the story we were given was never the real story to begin with. And the unraveling is exposing not just the truth about them, but the truth about the way Hollywood sells us illusions of perfection. We want to believe in love stories. We want to believe in the fairy tale. But when the curtain falls, when the posts stop, when the godmother of your children vanishes without a trace, the illusion breaks, and what remains is suspicion, doubt, and a hunger for answers. The signs point to an ending. Not sudden, but inevitable. A slow disintegration masked as co-parenting, staged as unity, yet hollow at the core. And as more people begin to question the narrative, as more fans replay the missed birthdays, the absent tributes, the empty interviews, the conclusion seems inescapable. It ends with them. The unraveling of the Blake and Ryan story does not simply rest on silence and missing tributes. It stretches into every calculated public appearance, every carefully placed article, and every subtle absence that fans have begun to catalog like detectives piecing together a puzzle. The more we look, the clearer it becomes that their marriage, once held up as the gold standard of Hollywood romance, is now a theater of shadows, staged moments meant to distract from the reality underneath. When Ryan stepped onto the red carpet recently without Blake by his side, the message was louder than any words could be. This was his project, his premiere, his opportunity to make a statement, and yet his wife, the woman who was once always positioned as his partner in every major moment, was nowhere to be seen. No explanation, no excuse. Not even a casual mention in passing. This is not oversight. This is strategy. Because in Hollywood, nothing is accidental. Everything is curated. Every smile, every absence, every silence. And this silence tells us more than any press release ever could. Fans began to notice more inconsistencies. The stories in the press about the couple attending a drive-in with their kids. A narrative that felt almost too convenient, too staged, as if planted to remind us that the family remains intact. But anyone who has studied these dynamics knows how easily such appearances can be manufactured. Co-parenting does not mean unity. Absence does not mean togetherness. It only means the story can be extended for a little longer before the inevitable announcement arrives, because behind the curtain, these two stars are living separate lives. The rhythm of Hollywood itself allows it long shoots months apart, endless projects, all creating a convenient cover for distance in the home, a distance that the children may not even notice. Yet the adults around them surely do. The rumors suggest that the house in Bedford is not a home at all, but a stage, a place to rotate appearances, to ensure the illusion lasts a little longer. But insiders whisper that the truth is clear. This is not a marriage in crisis. This is a marriage already ended quietly, living separate lives while the world clings to the fantasy that still lingers. On social media, the story takes on a darker dimension when we bring Taylor Swift back into the picture. The godmother of their children, her silence, her absence, her distance is the missing piece of the puzzle, because Taylor is not silent without reason. She is not absent without cause. And those who know her loyalty, her history, her devotion to friends understand that the only way she could sever ties so completely was if the betrayal cut to the core. The whispers claim Blake tried to leverage her name and power for advantage in a battle that was not Taylor's to fight. And when the truth surfaced, when Taylor saw the manipulation for what it was, she walked away, not quietly, but decisively. And Ryan surely felt the ripple of that decision, because he is not blind. He knows the weight of Taylor Swift in the public eye. He knows that her absence says more than 1,000 headlines combined. And if he did not already question the foundation of his marriage, that moment forced him to. He could no longer ignore the cracks, could no longer laugh them away with Instagram jokes and late-night banter. The image of loyalty and devotion was shattered, and from that point on, everything began to change. The red carpet, awkwardness, the missing posts, the lack of support for each other's ventures. All of it cascades from that fracture, and fans can sense it. They replay the moments, the staged photographs, the walk through the streets of New York, and see them now, not as evidence of love, but as desperate attempts to prove what was already failing. This is the great irony of celebrity. The more they try to convince us, the more transparent the truth becomes, because audiences are no longer naive. They know when something is real and when something is performance. And in the case of Blake and Ryan, the performance has lost its script. What remains is awkwardness, silence, and absence. Yet the drama does not stop there, because in the background, new whispers begin to surface about smear campaigns, about orchestrated efforts to control narratives and protect reputations. Variety publishes a piece suggesting that what we are witnessing may not be organic at all, but part of a larger web of manipulation. Linking Blake Lively to broader battles in Hollywood, battles involving other high-profile names like Rebel Wilson and the producers who now face defamation, claims the suggestion is that Blake is not merely a victim of public scrutiny, but part of an industry machine that uses influence, power, and spin to tilt public perception in her favor. But to those who have followed this saga closely, the idea feels almost laughable because the simplest explanation has always been the truest people are not turning on Blake because of a smear campaign. They are turning on her because the mask has slipped, the illusion has cracked, and audiences no longer buy the carefully polished image she once sold. This is not conspiracy. This is consequence. The result of choices made behind closed doors. Choices that alienated allies, burned bridges, and left even her closest friends unwilling to stand beside her. And Ryan, caught in the middle, finds himself forced to choose between continuing the illusion or finally acknowledging the truth. His silence, his absences, his missing tributes suggest he has already chosen quietly, slowly without fanfare. He is distancing himself, and when the moment comes, when the announcement finally arrives, the public will not be shocked. They will nod and say, "We knew it all along," because the evidence has been there for months, perhaps even years, hidden in plain sight. What makes this unraveling so captivating is not just the silence between Blake and Ryan, but the way their every move seems to contradict the story they are trying so desperately to sell. Because for years, Ryan Reynolds was the husband who prided himself on making his marriage part of his brand. He was the witty partner, the doting father, the social media comedian who never missed an opportunity to post about his wife and children. And yet now those posts have vanished, the very absence of them acting like a neon sign flashing warning signals to anyone paying attention, and audiences are paying attention more than ever before. In fact, it is the fans themselves who have become investigators, replaying clips, zooming in on body language, dissecting interviews where a single word or a single glance reveals more than entire press tours ever could. And what they see is a marriage that no longer functions as a partnership, but as a performance gone cold. Ryan at premieres without Blake. Blake launching projects without Ryan's support, neither acknowledging the other in ways that used to define their image. This is not oversight, it is calculated omission. The deliberate choice to withdraw public displays of unity in favor of a strategic silence that allows them to prolong the inevitable announcement. The psychology of this is fascinating because couples who have built their careers on selling an image of devotion cannot simply stop without consequence, so they drip feed appearances, carefully crafted stories about drive-in movies with kids, or quiet nights at home, a breadcrumb trail designed to keep the illusion alive for a little longer. But those crumbs no longer satisfy the audience. Instead, they spark suspicion. Each stage story feels hollow. Each photograph feels forced. The chemistry, once effortless, now replaced with a stiffness that speaks louder than words, and the missing birthday post. Perhaps the most glaring omission of all is the moment fans point to as proof, because in celebrity culture, birthdays are currency, the easiest, most visible way to signal unity. And when Ryan chose silence on Blake's birthday, he said more than any caption ever could. And what followed was the growing chorus of speculation that their marriage is over, the whispers of separation, the hints of co-parenting arrangements, the sightings of them living separate lives under the same roof, all converging into a narrative that cannot be ignored. And then comes the Taylor Swift factor. Again, the missing friendship, the silence between them, the godmother who walked away. Because when Taylor stands by someone, she stands through storms, through addiction, through controversy, through scandal. Yet she no longer stands by Blake. That absence speaks volumes, and the internet knows it. This is why the unraveling of the Blake and Ryan marriage is not merely gossip, but a cultural moment. It ties into larger questions about authenticity, about the illusions of Hollywood, about the way carefully staged narratives collapse under the weight of truth. Because once audiences sense the performance is not real, they begin to see every gesture differently. What once looked like love now looks like calculation. What once felt like charm now feels like manipulation, and Ryan himself cannot escape this transformation. The man once beloved for his humor, now scrutinized for insincerity, that awkward smile on the red carpet, that sharp comment to a child interviewer dissected as evidence of a man no longer able to maintain the mask of effortless charm. And when fans compare him to Anne Hathaway, they see the distinction clearly. She was never cruel, merely too polished, too rehearsed, while he now appears not just rehearsed, but guarded, defensive, perhaps even resentful, and the whispers grow louder. Could this be the real Ryan emerging from behind the curtain, a man who has long hidden behind sarcasm and performance, but who now finds himself exposed, unable to maintain the illusion any longer? And what of Blake, the actress once positioned as America's sweetheart, now facing accusations of manipulation, betrayal, and opportunism? The Variety article attempting to frame her as the target of smear campaigns only deepens the suspicion, because when journalists aligned with her push narratives that contradict the public's perception, it feels less like truth and more like spin. Audiences are not buying it. They believe what they see, and what they see is a woman isolated from former allies. Her closest friendships severed her marriage, unraveling her projects unsupported by the partner who once promoted her every move. And when you add the Justin Baldoni saga into the mix, the picture darkens further. Because this was not just a professional disagreement, it was a battle that exposed her willingness to play hardball, to step into the shadows of manipulation. And when it backfired, it left her credibility fractured in ways that even the best PR team could not repair. The public does not forget, the public does not forgive. And while scandals may fade, the absence of trust remains. Audiences begin to connect the dots from Baldoni to Swift to Reynolds, and the pattern that emerges is one of isolation, bridges burned, allies lost, a marriage collapsing under the weight of secrets and silence. And while Blake may hope that time will heal these wounds, the reality is that time only amplifies them, because every silent birthday, every missed tribute, every solo red carpet appearance becomes another nail in the coffin of their public image. And still the world waits for the announcement. The official confirmation that the illusion has ended, that the marriage has dissolved, because deep down everyone already knows. They are simply waiting for the words to make it official. The longer this story stretches, the more the silence itself becomes the loudest voice in the room, because audiences understand patterns. They understand that when a celebrity couple known for constant public displays suddenly goes dark, something seismic has shifted behind the scenes. And in the case of Blake and Ryan, every missing post, every absent caption, every unacknowledged milestone becomes a clue, a breadcrumb leading to the inevitable revelation of separation. What makes it even more compelling is the precision with which both seem to be navigating this unraveling, neither confirming nor denying, neither affirming nor outright rejecting, but instead leaving the public to speculate, to build theories, to connect dots in ways that keep the intrigue alive. And in Hollywood, this is not accidental. It is strategy. Because the longer people speculate, the longer their names dominate headlines, the longer the anticipation builds for the official announcement. And that announcement, when it comes, will not just be a story. It will be an event, an earthquake that ripples across media outlets, social platforms, and fan communities alike. Because the myth of their perfect marriage has been sold for so long that its collapse feels like the fall of an empire. And yet beneath the spectacle, there is the human cost. The children, the friendships, lost, the trust broken. Because these stories are not just crafted illusions, they are lived realities. And for Ryan Reynolds, the man who once built his persona on being the witty husband, the adoring father, the playful partner, the unraveling of this image threatens not only his marriage, but his brand, his career, his very identity in the eyes of fans. Because once the charm is questioned, once the authenticity is doubted, it is nearly impossible to reclaim. And audiences have already begun to shift the once effortless laughter at his jokes, now tinged with suspicion, the once charming sarcasm, now read as cruelty, the once perfect couple, now dissected as a cautionary tale of how carefully crafted images can collapse overnight. And for Blake Lively, the stakes are just as high, because her narrative has long relied on connections, on alliances, on the support of friends who amplify her image, and now with Taylor Swift absent, with Justin Baldoni standing vindicated, with journalists scrambling to spin narratives in her favor, she finds herself increasingly isolated, the Variety piece suggesting smear campaigns only underscores her desperation because the public does not see her as a victim of conspiracies, they see her as the architect of her own downfall. And that perception is far more damaging than any external attack. Because once the public decides you are disingenuous, every move, every word, every silence is filtered through that lens, and nothing feels authentic anymore. This is why the unraveling of Blake and Ryan has captured such obsessive attention. It is not just the collapse of a marriage, it is the collapse of a myth. The exposure of Hollywood's sleight of hand, the reminder that behind every staged photo, every witty caption, every glowing headline, there are cracks, secrets, fractures that cannot be hidden forever. And the suspense now lies not in whether they will announce the end, but in when and how will it come as a joint statement, polished and amicable, thanking each other for years of love and friendship. Will it be a leak to the press framed as a mutual decision? Will it be a scandalous reveal, exposed by insiders who can no longer keep quiet? The possibilities swirl, and with each passing day, the pressure mounts, because the longer they wait, the louder the speculation becomes, and the more undeniable the truth appears. The fans are no longer asking if they are over. They are asking when they will admit it. And each time Ryan steps onto a red carpet alone, each time Blake launches a project without his visible support, each time Taylor Swift remains silent, the answer becomes clearer: it ends with them. And when that ending comes, it will not just mark the conclusion of a Hollywood marriage, it will mark the collapse of one of the most carefully crafted illusions of the last decade, a reminder to audiences everywhere that even the most picture-perfect stories can crumble under the weight of secrets, silence, and betrayal. And so we arrive at the end of this unraveling saga, a story that began as whispers and shadows and has now grown into a storm that cannot be contained. The truth is no longer hiding in the corners, it is standing in plain sight. In the silence, in the absence, in the fractures too visible to deny, Blake Lively, once seen as untouchable, now faces the collapse of alliances she thought would protect her, the loss of friendships she assumed were unbreakable, the exposure of a carefully constructed image that no longer holds weight. Her battle with Justin Baldoni, her quiet war with Taylor Swift, her strained dynamic with Ryan Reynolds. All of it converges into one undeniable reality: she is no longer in control of the narrative. For Ryan Reynolds, the unraveling is just as catastrophic, because he was not merely a husband in this story. He was a brand, a personality, a cultural figure defined by his devotion, his wit, his supposed authenticity, and now with every silence, every absent post, every red carpet moment where he stands alone, that brand erodes piece by piece, charm becoming cruelty, wit becoming deflection, authenticity becoming fabrication, until there is nothing left but questions and doubt. The public no longer asks if this marriage is intact. They ask when the final admission will arrive, and when it does, it will not be met with shock, but with the chilling confirmation of what everyone already knew: that even Hollywood's golden couples are not immune to collapse, that even the most polished illusions cannot withstand the weight of truth and betrayal. This saga ends not with fireworks, but with silence, a silence louder than any statement, and a truth too powerful to deny. It ends with them.